Charles Moscowitz here. My guest is Don Jans. MyGrandchildren'sAmerica.com is his website, where he gives us wisdom born of his years of experience in business and in our great culture, and where he is developing a legacy for his grandchildren to remember and to read and to understand the issues as they really are. Don, thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, Chuck.
Now, Don, we have to talk, of course, about the main issue of today. It's not avoidable. And that is that the U.S. House of Representatives is about to vote, apparently, to impeach President Trump. I want to hear your thoughts on it, and then we can take it from there.
Okay. I think we have to go back and we have to understand that the desire by the left to change or to nullify our Constitution has been going on for many years. We first really saw it with Woodrow Wilson when he said, hey, we should not be the type of government we are. We should be a parliamentary government. And he attempted to change the Constitution. Of course, he failed. We go up on through the years and we see constant attacks on our Constitution, especially under Franklin Roosevelt. He literally abolished every standard that we had set, everything that we thought was proper. Roosevelt said, no, I'm a collectivist, I'm a communist, and I'm going to change it, and government is going to be the ultimate control, the sovereign. We really saw it again under, we continue to see these attacks, and then we see it under Barack Obama, who really emphasized that we're going to destroy our three branches of government, and we're going to place the judiciary branch as our main legislative branch, because that's the way I can get things done. Mm-hmm. This is a continuation.
You know, I mean, the point you're making about Wilson's desire to create a parliamentary system, which he laid out in an essay he wrote in the 1890s, I believe. That's sort of where they're going with this impeachment thing, because, you know, they've now said that not only will they do an impeachment, but they're going to do more impeachments. They're going to continue investigating. And if President Trump's reelected, there'll be probably maybe 2 or 3 impeachments a year. And it's kind of like the parliamentary idea of like the vote of no confidence. And, you know, as opposed to accepting an election and then working to present alternative ideas and running on those ideas and seeing if they resonate with people. And, you know, it's troubling. I mean, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's working out for them. I think that President Trump, I think most people see that this whole thing is based on a lie. I mean, it's completely false. And I think it's going to strengthen him. Hopefully, we need to talk about taking back the House so that we don't have impeachments every 2 or 3 times a year, but that we can focus on the business of government. As far as FDR is concerned, you know, he had an emergency declaration voted by Congress in the first weeks of his presidency. He laid it out in his inaugural address that he wanted emergency powers to deal with the Depression. And basically that emergency legislation is renewed every 2 years by Congress ever since. Yes. And it gives the president the power, the executive the power to override both Congress and the judiciary and to have, quote, emergency powers. That's how Roosevelt set up all the so-called, you know, alphabet agencies, which was the first time the federal government would usurp powers that had previously been with the states and with people. And then Obama, as you say, he gave a pretty well-known talk to an NPR station in Illinois when he was still a state rep, where he said that the judiciary is where the action is, and that he believes in government by administrative rule versus elective rule and under a constitution. And I think that this issue is what is driving the left absolutely off the deep end more than anything else. And that is that Donald Trump has been able to confirm, I think it's 150 federal judges and
170 some now.
170, including 2 Supreme Court judges, with a third one possibly on the way. And that these are more constitutionally minded people who are, not going to make it up as they go. They're not going to do the, legislative. They're not going to do this administrative government, but they respect the proper roles of each branch. And in addition, he has made the brilliant appointment of William Barr as Attorney General.
Yes.
Who is, I mean, if you've heard his speeches recently at the Federalist dinner in Washington, and also he was interviewed recently on, I think, Fox or some station, he understands the balances of power, and he understands where they've become unbalanced. And he is somebody who is a pretty tough guy in terms of making sure that each agency operates in its proper lane. And that they want him impeached. They want him censured. I mean, it's absolutely driving them crazy. And, this whole thing is, I mean, I'm sorry to have to use a vulgarity here, but I'm going to have to just say that this impeachment is one national orgasm for the left.
Yes.
And then hopefully afterwards they're going to feel better and get along with their lives. Although I highly doubt that. What I think is going to happen is it's going to set them into more rage and more of a frenzy. We already see the pussy hat people rioting, the same old crew that comes out, going all the way back. And it's not going to get more pleasant.
No.
It's going to get uglier, especially as the election approaches and Trump has to face somebody like Bernie Sanders. I mean, and I think he's going to win.
Biden is gone.
I think he is. I mean, they despise Rudy Giuliani. Oh, my God. And he's a lawyer representing the president, looking at corruption in Ukraine, heaven forbid. He just came back with real hardcore information about Biden taking not millions, but billions.
Billions.
Now, this is something that we would conventionally assume the left would be against, right? This kind of corruption where you have someone putting, family members on the payroll. And by the way, Republicans are doing it too. It's not,
Absolutely.
This isn't a partisan thing. And, taking advantage of their offices is a word for that. It's emoluments. Of course, they accuse Trump of that. Everything they accuse Trump of, it's like projection. I mean, it's what they're doing. And, that's what he's trying to investigate. I mean,
Yes.
Is that, and this is something he should be impeached for? I suppose he should be if you're on the left and you want to protect your emoluments and all your friends taking them.
Well, I would, as you know, I like to make definitions or give definitions and then find out what fits. And there's a couple of things here. First of all, we are not in the middle of an impeachment. This is a coup. Remember the difference. A coup is an illegal attempt to overthrow a sitting government. This coup was stated that it would take place prior to Trump even being nominated by the Republican Party.
Right.
After he was nominated, of course, it gained more movement, and then once he was elected and inaugurated, of course, it came out full spirit. You don't need a crime to commit a coup against somebody. You just hate them, disagree with them, and say we want them out of power. An impeachment is a legal and a constitutional declared element. And an impeachment requires the crime of a sitting official. The Constitution defines who these sitting officials are, and of course included in that would be people like judges and the president. But the Constitution says, in order for an impeachment to occur, that individual has to be proven of treason or a high crime and misdemeanor. And so you don't declare we're going to impeach somebody prior to them even being nominated and call it an impeachment. It can only be called a coup. And this is what the American people have to understand, that this whole effort has nothing to do with following the Constitution, has nothing to do with following the rule of law, all it has to do with is a political party that understands that their power is being threatened and they want to end that threat. And Trump made it very clear he would drain the swamp. And that's what he's doing.
I mean, this is a gasp of the deep state to retain its authoritarian power and to stand up against what is happening in the country, which is a genuinely populist and nationalist movement that includes all Americans. Of course, they want to try to divide us by claiming that one faction doesn't like the other based on race and that kind of those sort of lies. But I don't think that's even flying now. I think that they're losing ground on that. And I think that Nancy Pelosi just the other day kind of spilled the beans on this whole thing when someone asked her, why are you in such a hurry to impeach the president? What's the big rush? And she says, oh, no, we're not in a hurry. We've been working on this for 2.5 years, right?
Is that an impeachment or a coup?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of tells you. I mean, they did start at day one. I mean, I think the day after he was elected was that the Washington Post had a headline, first day of the impeachment. And, we have idiots like this historian, Alan Lichtman, who goes around, he comes on my show and he lists issues by which Trump should be impeached, including his war against women. I mean, really? It's like, these people, and you have, I mean, I don't get this, but people who otherwise are sober people, the best and the brightest, like, for example, Lawrence Tribe, right? Harvard law professor who's considered for the Supreme Court by Obama, one of these revered, types. And he has I follow his Twitter feed and I respond to it. And I mean, he's crazier than Alex Jones. I mean, nothing against Alex Jones, but you know what I mean? Like
Alex Jones goes off the deep end at times.
Yeah, I mean, real nut conspiracy, and so mean. And he goes after Melania, goes after Ivanka. He seems to have a problem with the Trump women more than anything.
Yes,
but it's so ugly. And you got Rob Reiner. Oh my God, what a nut! I hope he slips. He's out there protesting in Los Angeles. I said, I hope you don't slip on what all over the streets out there and break your what. I mean, just disgusting, vulgar, hatred. And these are people who we assume are relatively sober, intelligent people, and they are gripped. And by the way, there are plenty of people who are not Trump haters who have legitimate complaints against Donald Trump's policies. I get that. I had a conversation the other day with someone who says they don't like Trump because they're liberal on issues like abortion and they don't want to have judges who are going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Look, I don't agree with them, but that's a legitimate political question that one can debate in a sober way. But this guy wasn't filled with this demented, deranged Trump hatred, which is people are just dripping with rage. There is something going on there mentally. It shows a certain pathology, I think, that has always been on the left, but that is coming out much more now because of the fact that you have someone like Trump who isn't just posing as a conservative and as a constitutionalist, but he's actually doing it. Yes. And it is absolutely, they're just insane with rage. And that's what this whole thing is. It's just rage, going amok.
Yes.
That's all it is.
And never have we had an outsider that wasn't in some form of government in the United States Armed Forces or had been in roles of government that have come in and become president. And what we found out about Donald Trump is that he does not know how. In fact, he's been accused, and rightfully so. Paul Ryan said he doesn't know how to play the Washington game. He doesn't.
That's right. He won't play the Washington game. And he doesn't. This is the other thing. This is a snob thing, too, because Trump doesn't talk like, John Kerry. Sounds like he has a mouthful of marbles, and he doesn't use the phony British accent with this kind of smarmy double talk and innuendo and code language that the left expects. He doesn't do that. He speaks plainly. He's honest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he may sometimes fib a little bit here and there, but his kinds of fibs are usually the harmless kind, like, "Hey, I caught a bigger fish than you did," you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
My
hyperbole.
crowd was bigger than yours. And he shouldn't do that. I don't like that about him. I mean, I don't think he needs to do that. He's bigger than that, for God's sakes. But the point is, these aren't the big kind of lies that the left has. Like, if you like your healthcare plan, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. I'm going to lower the cost of healthcare, which Obama went around the country saying 45 times. I mean, those are big lies.
And he knew it.
Those are like, we just had this report come out showing that successive administrations, Trump much less so, had lied about American involvement in Afghanistan, going all the way back to Bush. Those are big lies.
Yes.
That's stuff that people die over. That's stuff that can affect, people's lives in the world. Trump doesn't do those kinds of lies. I mean, that's typical of the left. The whole edifice is built on lies.
Here's what scares me. Here's what really concerns me: that we go along and we're playing this game of impeachment. We say, "Oh, this is impeachment," and we're trying to prove that what what the left is accusing Trump of doing, he hasn't done. Well, that goes without saying. You can't do. I mean, how do you obstruct Congress? Come on, let's get real. So all of that is nonsense. But we get into this and we're playing this game. In all likelihood, it appears that what's going to happen in 2020 is that Trump's going to win a resounding victory. That we're going to see a UK style election here in the United States.
I think that's scaring them too.
Well, but I want to go beyond that. I want to go beyond that, because if we don't learn our lesson here, we're never ever going to recover a second time. And what we have to understand is that this movement that is taking place in the United States is not the typical movement we had in the 1800s or even in much of the 1900s, except for Wilson and Roosevelt and Obama. And that is, like you were talking about, our differences in political opinions. Do we believe in a steeply progressive income tax, or do we believe that we should have a greatly reduced income tax, and maybe even an income tax is wrong? We can have those discussions. We can have those
debates. Exactly. Those are reasonable debates. But I think, of course, in those debates, the conservative side wins, which is why they're resorting to, I mean, it's the old, Saul Alinsky playbook, rules for radicals. You don't argue and debate your opponent. You destroy your opponent.
Right.
With mockery, with any means necessary. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what they're trying to do. They don't want to debate Trump on the issues. They don't want to talk about, judges that support the Constitution as opposed to making it up as they go, or, keeping taxes low so working people can keep a little bit more of what they've earned, or trade policies that protect American labor or business. They don't want to talk about things that are related to national sovereignty, like securing the border and making sure we know who's coming in the country and who isn't. Those are basic common sense things that any sane nation should do, just like any sane person does when they lock the front door of their house. You like to know who's coming in and who isn't. That's property. That's the right. I mean, the nation operates as our national homeland. I mean, as opposed to our individual homes. And it's a normal thing. I mean, the animal kingdom understands this. Don't try to invade a bird's nest and see what happens. I mean, go get too close to a dog and find out what happens. Animals understand property. They understand territory. These are normal things. These are institutions that are part of who we are. They're wired into us. And yet the left wants to subvert them. They want to overthrow them, and they want to create their world order. So let them have their effing impeachment. We should mock them.
And we shouldn't give them credence. But when and Trump's going, I hope McConnell has as much courage in this issue as he had in Kavanaugh. I've mocked McConnell a lot, but I had to admire him
Oh yeah.
in the Kavanaugh situation, and I think I'm going to admire him in the way he's going to handle this nonsense coup. So
I
so
hope so.
so what I think we're going to see is I think we're going to see within a month or by the end of January, I think we're going to be moving on. However, it's my belief that if we just drop the subject, it's going to come back and it's going to destroy us again. That we have to understand who this enemy is, and they are declared enemies. We were told in
Mhm.
November of 2008 that that they will fundamentally transform the United States. They have taken. Obama said that when he knew he was going to win after McCain had given up. And McCain had the gall to call himself a conservative, but but Obama declared that. It's been going on for a long time, and Obama, I don't. I know he's a communist. I know he's an Islamic jihadist sympathizer, but I have to admit he was very successful in his 8 years in the presidency because he accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. He brought strict division between the races. He brought about a war on our police force. He did that directly through Black Lives Matter. He continued to go and he continued to destroy the Constitution. He openly stated, what, 25 times, I can't sign legislation that legalizes these people. And what did he do? He said, oh, forget it. I don't believe in the Constitution anyway. I'm going to do that. Now we have a direct affront on that, and we are at a crossroads. Unless we understand and we start to understand the nuances of what these people are doing, of what they wish to achieve, we're not going to be successful, even though we win the election. And I think we'll take back the House, and I think we'll have a much larger majority in the Senate. But we have to understand that the left is, number one, vindictive. Number two, they are vicious. And number three, they are persistent. They do not give up.
Right. Well, they have the long lens. It's like the Gramsci,
Mhm.
Antonio Gramsci approach, the long, slow march through the institutions. They control the high ground in the institutions, the academia, the
Mhm.
arts, the entertainment, corporations. They control that,
The
very
media.
sure. Oh, absolutely. And, it's taken them 100 years to get there. And yeah, this is how they view it. So the question before us right now, you mentioned Mitch McConnell, who I think has actually been quite courageous in his standing up, certainly for Kavanaugh and for all of the other judges. I think he has either one of two options, which is number one, simply throw this thing out and
Mhm.
dismiss it as having no merit, which it doesn't. And he could
Right.
say, this is not worthy of debate. We are simply going to dismiss this. Or he could conduct a full trial where all of this stuff can be exposed. Who was behind this conspiracy? And Trump has already implied this in his tweets, bringing up the whistleblower and the so-called second whistleblower, which rumor has it is that Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, and bringing in Hunter Biden and finding out what was going on with Burisma and how it is that he was getting 75 grand a month, for that, and the connection between
Mhm.
Biden, bringing Biden in to talk about what he meant when he was speaking in front of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he said on video that he would demand that they fired the prosecutor who was investigating Burisma, or else he was going to withhold aid. Find out what that was. I mean, maybe that will expose this conspiracy. And I do use the word conspiracy,
Yes.
and that'll really put it to bed. On the other hand, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the first approach is better. Just put the thing out and move on. Like George Soros's group, MoveOn.org. Well, fine, MoveOn.org. He put that together after Clinton. Well, we'll put it together now.
it I'm not. I'm
Excuse
stating
me.
to you as to which is the best way to go. And I would say that you just vote up or down on the articles of impeachment, dismiss them, and we move on. However, with one caveat, and very, 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 very critical caveat, we have a who has become a true crusader as our Judiciary Committee chairman, Senator Graham, and that we use that Judiciary Committee becomes the investigative arm into all of this corruption that has taken place, that it is the committee that goes and thoroughly analyzes what's going to come out of the Dunbar report, that it's Graham's committee that goes in and thoroughly investigates this Ukrainian corruption and goes beyond that and thoroughly investigates what took place in China. That it's the committee that does a lot of that, and we get it.
But that would be, you're talking about that as a separate committee from the impeachment.
Yes.
Right, I agree. Okay.
Yes, they operate as a judiciary committee because the impeachment is gone.
Right. No, and also you have shoes are still dropping around the Horowitz report, which is the Inspector General, by the way, appointed by Obama. He can't be accused of being a partisan, who is showing the kind of corruption that existed at the FBI, at the CIA, the National Security Council, the Department of Justice under Obama, and how they falsified. One guy actually literally went in and falsified a document to try to get spying against Carter Page. And now you have Comey admitting this, saying, oh, it was sloppy. It was and now you have the FISA court issuing a statement criticizing. So I think there were gradually repercussions and there were shoes dropping. And more importantly, you've got Attorney General Barr's legal counsel, John Durham, who was very big in Boston, by the way, in terms of convicting the crooked FBI agents, Zip Connolly and others during the mafia trials. Very nonpartisan guy. He's worked for both Democratic and Republican administrations. He's boring in on this. So you have, the wheels of justice are moving very slowly, but they're grinding forward. And, maybe, as you say, one approach would be to get rid of this frickin', impeachment, put it aside and be done with it, and let these things continue, let the investigations continue as we move forward. And hopefully the Republicans will take back the House, in which case that will accelerate things in terms of getting to this corruption. Because this is the kind of corruption that I think once it's exposed, liberals won't be able to ignore this because they understand that, we all live in the same system. We don't want to have a system where you have a government agency spying on people and gathering information and entrapping people like they did with Lieutenant General Flynn and harassing people and showing them up at their house at night where you have 24 SWAT team members dressed as ninjas pulling an old man out of his bed and throwing him in prison like they did with Roger Stone. I just don't think that that's the kind of America that even liberals want to see happen. And ultimately, I think a lot of people are going to turn on this. If we just methodically take it apart piece by piece, we need to be Fabian here. We need to learn from Gramsci and do this carefully and surgically over time so that we can expose the nature of this authoritarian corruption and do so in a way that people are able to step outside of this Trump arrangement or whatever it is and just see this for what it is, and I think that only then is it really going to be possible to make the changes we should make and to bring people to justice. We all want to see these people behind bars, but we have to be patient about it.
I agree with you, and it has to be fair. It cannot be vindictive. What we've seen in the House is total vindictiveness. We've seen a totally unfair system, and Americans do recognize what is fair and what is unfair. And I think this has hurt the left more than anything else is how unfair they have been, how they've been totally ignoring everything that we understand as rule of law, that we understand as fair play. If we do that, if the right does that, I think we will hurt ourselves tremendously. But if we do it in a fair, impartial, investigative way, showing the facts, I think that the American people will will come behind us and understand very clearly what has happened. It has corrupted our government. I think we can understand that within government as a natural course, you do have corruption, but never to the extent that we've seen here, where it goes right to the Oval Office.
Absolutely. Don Jans, I'd like to do a regular series with you and get your reflections on news as it develops. I really want to thank you for joining me. Could you let my listeners and viewers know where they can read your blog and get more information about your excellent work?
Yes, if they will go to my website, www.mygrandchildren'samerica.com. It's all one word. Don't use punctuation. And you'll go right directly to my website. If you don't remember that, simply go onto a search engine and type in Don, D-O-N, Jans, J-A-N-S, and it will take you there. It will also show you the different books. Since we have spoken, I have put together another book. It's called Two Visions of America. And what it does is it talks about the natural rights that are given to us by our Creator, as outlined by people like John Locke, referred to very much by our founders, especially Thomas Jefferson, and also Samuel Adams. And then it talks about entitlements that can only come about if government takes from one to give to another. They have nothing to do with rights, and yet in today's America, we are calling those entitlements, we're calling those rights to health care. No, health care, if it comes from government, is an entitlement. Rights to education. If it's paid for by government, it's not a right, it is an entitlement. And we have to understand the difference, because the left always favors entitlements and wants to do away with natural rights, which is freedom and liberty.
The other thing I just would note is it's bigger than a semantic question, but the left will tell you that something is government funded. This is government run, the government funded schools. It's not government funded, it's taxpayer funded.
Mm-hmm.
The government is operating as a middleman, and a lot of the money sticks to their fingers as it goes, and there's a lot of strings attached. But it's taxpayer funded. And if we have enough faith in ourselves as people to determine our own lives and our own destinies, we may consider taking back the money that we're giving to the government and developing our own means of healthcare and our own education, and we'll get it a lot better and a lot cheaper, and we can help a lot more people that way. Anyways, Don, again, I want to thank you for joining me. We'll do it again soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, Don. Thanks a lot.